All right, welcome. In this video, I'm going to go over some tips for your exam 1 and the sample exam 1 questions. So the first thing I want to point out is that the questions will say sometimes that you need to write a function prototype, a function definition, or a function call. So question number 1 asks for a function prototype, and you need to know the difference between a prototype, a definition, and a function call. So a function prototype is just a statement that describes a function. No matter if it's a function prototype or call or definition, it will have the name of the function, which is average age, and it will have parentheses. Now it doesn't matter if it's the definition or if it's, again, the prototype or the call, it's going to have this. Then you have to recognize that this is a prototype, which means it's a statement, so it will end with a semicolon. Function calls are statements and function prototypes are statements, and function definitions are blocks of code. So this is a function that takes three arguments of type integer and returns a double. So the return type will be a double, and the three arguments that it takes are of type integers. So the prototype just describes the type of data that can be passed to a function. So all I really need to do is put that this takes three integers, int, and int, all separated by commas. So basically what that says that in order to use this average age function, I need to give it three integers, and it's going to do its work and return a double. This is for the exam, this is only asking for the prototype. Now if I want to, I can put names for these variables, but it is not mandatory in the function prototype because the prototype just says I need you to give me three integers and I'm going to return a double. And even though it explains what the function does for this question, it's only asking for the prototype, so there's no reason to do anything else than just the prototype. So the other thing, for every question, you don't have to put everything you know, you just need to read the question carefully and answer what it's asking for. This is an exam. Question number 2. Write the function definition. So now you need to recognize that this question is asking for a function definition. A function definition is a block of code. Okay, so we got to go here. We got the name. The name of the function is letter grade. The function takes two double arguments. So it takes double grade 1 and double grade 2. And it returns a character. So I do recognize that this is a function definition, so it's going to be a block of code, and it takes two arguments. One is a double called grade 1, and the second one is a double called grade 2. So it's going to calculate the average of grade 1 and grade 2, and if the average is greater than or equal to 90, it will return a E, and if it's between 70 and 90, it will return a S, and if it's below 70, it will return a U. So there are a couple of ways to do this. I'm going to first declare a variable called average and calculate the average. And to calculate the average is just going to be grade 1 plus grade 2 divided by 2. Then the next thing I'm going to do is test that average that I've calculated to decide what I'm going to return. So if AVG is greater than or equal to 90, I will return an E. Else, if AVG is less than or equal to 70, I will return a U. So now I've taken care of all the cases in which AVG is 90 or above and 70 or below. So I can use a last else, which is going to take care of everything in between. Now if you used a logical and you did it a little different, your logic was different, as long as it works, that's perfectly fine. This for me is the most streamlined answer to this. The other thing to keep in mind is that, oh, I messed up. This should be an S. The other thing to keep in mind is that you need to have single quotations when you're dealing with a character. Now, since I do not have many question examples that show a function call, I am going to very quickly here do a function call to this. So assume I had a function that said, write the function, now this is not on the sample, but I just thought of this, write the function call to letter grade and declare any variables and assign values to make sure that it works. Now, when this function gets called, it's going to be called like this, letter grade. And it's going to take 2 arguments of type double, and it's going to return a character. So in order to call this function, this is not, again, this is not part of the question, it's just a little added feature here in the video. In order to call this function, I need to have 2 doubles. So I have double, I can, for purpose of a test, I can just declare X and Y, and I need to have a character. All right, so the letter grade function, it takes 2 doubles and it returns a character. Now the character that's getting returned from letter grade is going to be assigned that character. So when letter grade gets called, if letter grade returns an E, that E would be assigned to let. If letter grade returns a U, that U would be assigned to let. Or if letter grade returns an S, that would be assigned to let. Now the thing that I need to realize here is that X and Y are going to be passed to the function. Now if I pass X and Y to the function like this, grade 1 is, that's like passing X and saying double grade 1 equals X and double grade 2 equals Y. Now what's going to cause a problem here is that X and Y have not been assigned any values. So if I try to use this, call this function without giving values to X and Y, it's going to cause problems. So I need to make sure that I assign values to X and Y before passing them to the function. And I can assign values to X and Y either with user input or with just plain assignment statements. So I'm just going to say X equals 25.4 and Y equals 98.2. This way I have now taken care of assigning values, so when grade 1 gets declared and initialized, it will get initialized to 25.4, and when grade 2 will then get initialized to the value of 98.2. And if you don't really understand this at the moment, go back and review the function videos. This is just review for the test. This function call is not part of the test. I just added it just to demonstrate a function call. Question number 3. Write the definition of a function called larger that takes 2 arguments. I'm going to change this so that it takes 3 arguments. Why am I doing that? Because it's more interesting with 3 arguments. So it's going to take 3 arguments, and the function should return the larger of the 3 values. You should not assume that the variables will contain different values. All right, so this question does not even say what kind of arguments they are. Are they integers? Are they doubles? Are they characters? So it's up to you to decide if the question does not explicitly say. So once again, I have to recognize that this is a function definition. The name of it is larger. I'm going to decide to use integers, so I'm going to have int x, int y, and int z. I know that this is a function definition, so I need to return the largest, which would be an integer, and this is going to be a block of code. Now, in order to find the largest of 3, I could say if x is greater than or equal to y and x is greater than or equal to z, return x. Or I could use an additional variable, which is much cleaner and more streamlined when you're dealing with 3 different values. So I'm going to declare a new variable called large, and I'm going to set that value equal to x. I could set it equal to x or y or z. My goal here is just to find out which of the 3 is the largest and then return it. I also want to make sure that if x and y have the same values, that it's going to still return, it's going to test even when they are equal. So all I do now is if I've set large to x, I just test to see if y is greater than that. Is y greater than large? And if y happens to be greater than large, then I would set large equal to y. And then I test for z. Now in this case, the way that I'm doing it, you cannot use an if-else because you want to test every single case. And then after I have set them, I will return the largest. And the way that you can test this is pick some values. So if I pick, say I pick 10, 10, and 6, it'll say large would then be 10. And then it'll say, is 10 greater than 10? No, it's not. Is 6 greater than 10? No, it's not. Then it would return a 10. You could pick different values like 4, 6, and 12. And then large would start out as 4. And then it would say, is 6 larger than 4? Yes, it is. So large would turn to 6. And then it would say, is 12 larger than 6? Yes, it is. So large would turn to 12. And then it would return a 12. So you could try a whole bunch of different values and see which one works the best. Question number 4. Write the set of statements to perform the following steps. Now, one thing I want to point out about this question is that this question is not asking for a function. It's not asking for a main function. It's not asking for a full program. It's just asking for you to compare a variable called fruit that and see if it's a P, then you're going to update a variable called papaya. If it's a G, you're going to update a variable called guava. And if it's anything else, you're going to update a variable called bananas. So the other thing to keep in mind is you can assume for this question that fruit already has a value and that papaya, guava, and bananas have already been declared and have values as well. This is just a question to test your ability to compare. You have two choices for this. You can either use a switch or you can use a if-else, and I will show you both examples. So the first I will do is a switch, and when you're using a switch, you pick the variable that you're testing. This is just a keyword switch, and the variable that I'm testing is called fruit. A switch is a block of code, and then I just have different cases. So the cases I'm going to have for fruit, the first case is going to be a P. Remember, if it's a character, you need to put single quotations. The second case I'm going to have is going to be a G. And this question also doesn't say anything about upper and lower case. It just says uppercase. And then default is everything else. So what am I going to do if it is a P? I'm going to add one to a variable called papaya. So I'm just going to say papaya equals papaya plus 1, or I could also do papaya plus plus and then break. If it's G, I do guava equals guava plus 1 and break. And default, I would put bananas equals bananas plus 1. And I don't need a break in the default because I am already at the end of my switch. Now, if I decided that I didn't want to use switch and I wanted to use if-else, I could do it. If it doesn't specify in the question, I can pick which one I want to use. So I would do if fruit equals P, then papaya equals papaya plus 1, else if fruit equals G, then guava equals guava plus 1, else bananas equals bananas plus 1. So either one of these answers would have been correct for this question. Now, write a loop that will add up the squares of the first 100 whole numbers and store the result in a variable called total. Declare and initialize any variables. So for this question, I know that I need a loop because it says so. But in some questions, you might not know that it needs a loop. It might say words like continue or does this until or repeatedly does this. So you need to read the questions very carefully. In addition, this doesn't say anything about a function, so I don't need to write a function definition or a main function or anything like that. I just need to write the loop that would, at some point, if it was in a program, go inside of a function. But this is just a question to test my ability to write a loop. So I know that I'm going to do the first 100 whole numbers, and I know I need a variable called total. So I'm going to start out by declaring my variable total and initializing it. Since total is going to store a sum, I'm going to initialize total to 0. All right, now I'm going to add up the squares. So if I'm going to add up the squares, I need to figure out what is it that I'm actually putting into total. So I need to understand what it is that I'm doing. So I'm going to be adding up 1 plus 1, 1 times 1, plus 2 times 2, plus 3 times 3, all the way up to 100 times 100. And adding that all together and storing that result into my total. So I need to write a loop to do this. I'm going to choose to do a for loop because a for loop reminds me to put my initialization, my test, and my update all in the header. But this could also be done with a while loop. So in my for loop, I have my initialization, I have my test, and I have my update. So first I need to figure out what it is that I'm initializing. It's not total because I can't change the value of total each time. I need to have an additional variable. I'm going to use I for my iterator. And I need I to be the one that's going to first be 1, then be 2, then be 3, then be 4, then be 5, etc., all the way up to 100. So then I just need to set it up. I need to start when I is equal to 1. I want I to go up to and including 100, and I want I to go up by 1 each time. So I can use I plus plus, or I equals I plus 1, or I plus equals 1. Either one is fine. So now I have my loop, I have my initialization, I have my test, and I have my update. And now all I need to do is do my calculation. So to do my calculation, I'm going to start with I times I, and I'm going to add that to the current total, and I'm going to assign that result to total. So if you test it and you check, you start when I is 1. So I'm going to start when I is 1. So I'm going to take 1 times 1, add it to 0, and then it's going to go into that. Then I'm going to change, I will change to 2. Is 2 less than or equal to 100? Yes, it is. I will take 2 times 2, add that to the current total, and it'll go into total. Then it'll change to 3. Is 3 less than or equal to 100? Yes, it is. So this is the answer to that question. All right, in the next video, I will do the remaining questions.